What type of fraud in real estate are you almost as likely of being a victim of as catching the coronavirus? Up next. So today we're here with Melissa D'Ellena of D'Ellena Law, and we're talking about wire fraud. Now, wire fraud is hitting the real estate market at almost a viral type of situation. It's reported that 1,100% increase had occurred from 2015 to 2018, and there's about 11,300 people who were affected by this in 2018. Now, when we take that into retrospect, I want you to think about this for a second. That means that you have almost as much of a chance to be affected by wire fraud as you do coronavirus. It's pretty amazing. So these stats come according to the National Association of Realtors, and that coronavirus thing was something I did with a little bit of research on Google and just plugging some numbers in. Pretty crazy, right, Melissa?
Yeah, I mean, that's really staggering to hear the numbers on a national level. I have to say there have been cases here in Rhode Island of wire fraud, but it's not as prevalent as the national statistics. But it's still a very, very serious threat, and especially for clients that are moving around the country. You know, we have a lot of people who leave Rhode Island to go somewhere else or are coming into Rhode Island from somewhere else. So presumably that's just exacerbating the risk because they're going to be on a higher level of exposure.
So can you quickly explain to our listeners that are not familiar with wire fraud? First off, what is wiring money? Let's break it down real simple. What is wiring money?
So wiring money is just simply the electronic transfer of funds. And it's something that, we do internally between our bank accounts, but this is basically from bank to bank as a general rule or from account to account.
Okay.
So if I have an account that's at Citizens personally, but I need to wire it to my attorney's IOLTA or client's account, then it has to leave my account and go into their account. And of course, if that is happening intra-bank, it's a little bit safer, but a lot of times it's happening between banks, right? Because our particular IOLTA account, we have two. One is at Harbor One, one is at Citizens. Lots of clients bank at Bank of America or Chase. So in that case, they have to initiate funds to be transferred from their particular savings or checkings account into our client account for the use of their purchase.
Got you. So it's wow. So okay. So when you're looking at wire fraud, how could somebody may say, well, that seems pretty secure. It's going from your bank to their bank. What happens in between?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and certainly something that I think clients need to be aware of. It's not on the bank side where the wire fraud risk comes in. It's a function of somebody intercepting correspondence and basically promulgating that they are your title attorney, your realtor, your lender, and instructing you to wire money to a third-party source that is not the legitimate place where the funds need to go. So that's where the risk is, which is what makes it so scary. Once the money leaves your account, in essence, it's gone. But it's not something that inside the bank transfer that there's the risk. It's all about being tricked to send the money to a place that it doesn't belong in the first place. And that's really where, kind of the tips of hopefully this conversation are going to help clients be better prepared to avoid being tricked into wiring money where it's not supposed to go.
Very good. Promulgated. That's a great word. That's a great word. I'm going to add that to my vocabulary there. Melissa, what can you give us some examples of how these tricksters, how these fraudsters, what they are doing to take advantage of the consumer so that we know what
Absolutely. And this is definitely the scariest part, is that the fraudsters, the criminals, they're using something known as spoofing. So they're in people's email accounts, primarily the free ones, the Gmails, the AOLs, the accounts that you're not paying for, and they're watching. They have become extremely sophisticated in understanding the real estate conveyancing process, so that if they identify that there's a closing coming up or a real estate transaction coming up, they can essentially insert themselves into an email, making it look as though they are legitimate. They're from the lender side, they're from the attorney side, they're from the realtor side, and again, misdirect the client to give either non-public personal information or provide them with wire instructions to an account that's obviously not the designated area where the funds need to go. One of the ways that we see them doing this is they will jump into these free emails. So of course, our email Emilio, I think your email, those are not free emails. So our emails are secure. But when we're sending the transactional emails to someone whose recipient is a free Gmail account, and the criminal is watching that Gmail account, they basically have access to our signatures, our credential information as far as our names. And it's very simple for them to go in and really change minor points. And I've used my name as an example. D'Ellena has a lot of L's. If you add a particular L, it's going to look as though that's coming from us if you're not looking very carefully at the sender as the person who came from D'Ellena Law.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of parties involved in the lending side of things, right? You're talking to a loan officer assistant, an underwriter, a processor. It's easy for someone to just say, oh, I work for so-and-so bank, and these are the instructions as to where you need to wire the funds. And very often, that person has not been somebody you've talked to in the past. So I think really being super vigilant about all email correspondence that you're getting is really the first tip that we can offer to home buyers who are going to be wiring funds for a closing.
Sure.
Making sure that you know the person who's sending you the wire instructions, or at least you know that that person is a legitimate person that's associated with the particular lender, attorney, realtor. It's not just some random person all of a sudden you've received correspondence from for the first time.
Sure, absolutely. So if there's any question at all about who this person may be before replying to the email, we're going to suggest that you call that law office or title company or that bank or whoever it is immediately. You call the office. Don't call that person. Call the office, ask if so and so works there, verify that. And actually, if you can give them your wiring instructions over the phone versus over email, you're already in a much, much better spot. But make sure that is a Google verified phone number, and it's the number of the business that you're actually calling.
Yeah, and that's actually the second best tip, Emilio, for folks to be aware of is, first be hyper vigilant. Anything that feels funny or looks weird in an email, sometimes it's just a vernacular that's being used in an email correspondence. If you've been, routinely corresponding with my office and there's a particular formality, and now all of a sudden you're getting a less formal email about wiring funds, that should tip you off. The second recommendation is that you're absolutely calling a verifiable number,
Mhm.
not the number that's involved in the correspondence, because that's easy to change. So the number that you gave them to reach our office originally, or like you said, a Google verified number, and then they are verbally verifying the wire instructions over the phone. I will tell you that we very routinely do send instructions via email, but we talk to the clients before we do it. This is not something we're going to spring on you. We
Yeah.
never change our wire instructions. So that's, again, going to be a red flag if someone says, oh, remember those wire instructions I gave you last week? Those are no good. Use these.
Yeah.
That is definitely a red flag if you get it through an email correspondence. We will call you. We will recommend that after you've printed them through the secure encryption we've sent, that you call us back before you go to the bank and verify the instructions again. And then you go to the bank and you initiate the wire, because the reality is wire is very much a part of the real estate conveyance. It is required in a lot of jurisdictions, and it's necessary to facilitate transactions when you don't have physical banks where you can get a bank check. So it is something that we know that we have to live with, but being hyper vigilant and knowing some of these types of tips hopefully will avoid putting people in the parameters of being at risk of the statistics you gave us earlier.
Wow, there's one other thing I'd like to throw in there too, and you kind of touched upon it about the vernacular of the conversation. It's just also there's a lot of people that are coming from out of country, so you see a lot of things from Africa, from Asia, these different hackers or these different fraudsters, if you may, and their English is usually pretty far off from what it should be. There's some that are much better and more clever than others, but you'll kind of hear it and you'll see it, and it's also one of those indicators like, wait a second, I don't recall speaking with somebody that had such chopped up English. This doesn't make sense. So these are all sorts of red flags that we want you to be totally aware of, because this is real. With 11,300 cases in 2018, up 1,100% from 15 to 17, throwing out a lot of numbers there, but I can only imagine that it's much higher now. So let's, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, people are very distracted right now with everything that's going on with Corona and, having to maintain social distancing. Even the simple aspects that were complicated before are simple by comparison, like moving.
Yeah.
scheduling movers. How do you go about organizing people to be in your home and moving your belongings? That is a much more stressful undertaking now, which is why I think, frankly, we have more vulnerability for the fraudsters to just go in. People are moving slower and faster at the same time as a result of this COVID-19 crisis that we're undertaking. So you just have to be super hyper vigilant. And that's the best advice we can give.
100% awesome. Thank you so much. Melissa D'Ellena with D'Ellena Law. Her office is in East Greenwich, Rhode Island, covering Rhode Island and Massachusetts real estate for, I mean, your family's been in the business for over 40 years,
Yeah.
collectively about 60 years of real estate practice just in her office alone between her and her father. So, Melissa, we appreciate having your opinion here and your advice. And we hope you have a fantastic day. Please stay safe out there. And if there's any questions at all, consult your real estate attorney. And if you don't have one, you might want to consider getting one for protection. Awesome. Thank you so much, Melissa. Take care, everybody.